Ho, ho, ho. We are live. Oh, I'm pumped for this one. Absolutely pumped for this. Gonna wait for a few of you to join, and we will get underway here in just a moment. I haven't done a solo episode in quite some time, so this is going to be a fun one tonight. We've got Butsy, who is out for the moment. He unfortunately threw out his back. Washing his truck today. Threw out his back, Butsy did. Tough one. Tough one for the Butts, man. So he will not be joining us tonight. He sent me a picture of himself on the couch. He goes, "Hey, wheelchair episode, question mark." And I was like, man, don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. I got it covered. I will make sure that we get this episode dialed in today. And Truck Golfer says, too much muscle. Well, I will tell you, I was out playing golf with him, and I'll tell the story when we're on the podcast in a little bit more detail. But his buddy who we were playing with was like, man, is it due to, because he was running into some back issues over the weekend as well. A lot of golf was played, and he ran into a couple little back issues. And sure enough, his buddy was asking him, hey, you think it's because you've added on so much bulk? You know, kind of like Tiger Woods. And Butsy was like, yeah, it's got to be a little bit of that. Certainly has to be. So Butsy is on injured reserve right now. Poor guy. He's got like a Stint's machine hooked up to his back, making it pulse and so forth. So he is out of action for the moment. But he will surely be back, because I do have some news and some information regarding Butsy as well for next week in the show. But man, this episode, and looks like we just got a bunch of people that jumped on. So we're going to get started here in just a moment, folks. But certainly, solo episode. Haven't done one of these in quite some time. I'm excited about it because it always is a little bit of a test for me as a host to be able to carry a show for the entire duration. And I will make sure that we certainly do exactly that on this particular episode. And Trot Golfer saying, were you with him for the hole-in-one? I sure was. So it's crazy how you know about this already, Trot. It's almost like you were there, but you weren't there. I would have loved to have you there as well. But yeah, that the hole-in-one story, that is something that I am going to be talking about on the podcast episode. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why, Butsy is hurting, because he wanted to be on this podcast episode and be able to share that particular story. But it's just a story that we're going to have to share. It's one of those that, it happened over the weekend. We got to share it. We're not going to save it for next week. So without further ado, I don't know. Have you guys ever tried these Hi-Yos? First time for me. It's supposed to have like nootropics and botanicals and adaptogens, whatever the hell adaptogens are and botanicals. I know what nootropics is, but it's supposed to make you feel like you are, how do they put it? Feel the float, they say. So it's supposed to make you feel like you're a little bit on a couple beverages of booze, but that's not the case, because I am off the wagon. If you guys haven't noticed, past couple weeks especially, I've been off the wagon. There's some reasons behind it, not because of dealing with anything. I love my whiskey, absolutely love it, but there's some other factors that are going into me being off of the wagon. But it's been interesting because I've seen a lot of drunk people around me a lot lately, and we will certainly be discussing that a little bit on this particular episode. Now, Truck Golfer says, by the way, Swannies, Ivy Hood. See, man, And by the way, this is the fall season preview episode, because obviously the golf season is done as of right now. And now we get into what I like to refer to as silly season on the PGA Tour. And we'll go over all of that on tonight's episode. But yeah, I love me some Swannies hoodies. That's why I got the fall backdrop here. And if anybody can name me this golf course, because I actually took this photo on a BlackBerry device. That should probably tell you how long ago it was. But somehow, some way, the picture came out so gosh darn good because it was so damn gorgeous there. But I was lucky enough to play this track a couple times. So a little trivia question for all of you out there watching on YouTube, on X, on Millions.co, and the millions of audience members that are out there. So once again, we are just getting it going here. And let me go ahead. We'll get this episode started for everybody. So without further ado, let's have a moment of silence and then I'll count us all in. In 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everybody, to Pull Hook Golf, the podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cook. Tonight it is a solo episode because our man Butsy, our co-host, he is down for the count right now. Say some prayers for good old Butsy because he blew out his back pretty bad today, and he was really trying to make it to this show because there's some stories that I'm going to be sharing with all of you that he wishes he was the one that was sharing them because there's a hole-in-one involved, there's some gambling involved, there's some great weather involved, some great golf involved, and so forth. So we will go over all of that tonight on tonight's episode. But yes, folks, we do have the 2024 Tour Championship recap that we got to get into. We've got the President's Cup with some captains' picks on each side. We're going to be talking about that. Then we got the Swannies style segment, which we're going to go over some fall golf essentials, okay? We're going to get you ready for fall golf season. And we've got finally the fall golf preview of what's to come now that the season is officially over. We get into one of my favorite times of year, which is what I call the silly season in golf. But once again, we will get to that in a little bit. I know audience members, certainly I asked a trivia question before we came onto the recording of the podcast, but if you are watching, I have a beautiful backdrop tonight. This is a place that I was at and was fortunate enough to play several times, and it's an absolute gem, but it's got the fall foliage going on. It's just in pristine condition. And here's the thing. I took this photo with the BlackBerry back in the day. So that should give you a little bit of a telltale as to how long ago this photo was taken, and yet it still looks this good. So yeah, if anybody can figure out the background of this fall foliage, I want to say it so badly, but I'm going to let the audience try to figure this out. Trot Golfer throws in here. He said, it looks like Utah. It isn't. I will tell you that much. It is not on the Utah side of the map. So give you a little hint on that one. Carlos Flores says, get better soon, Butsy. I'm telling you, say some prayers. His back was bothering him over the weekend as well, which he's been back and forth the past, I would say, month, dealing with a little bit of back tenderness that's been going on. So definitely want to give a shout out to him. Nick Nowitzki says, in Flagstaff. No, that's a great question, or a great stab at it. It is not in Flagstaff, but it does kind of look a little bit like Flag, if you ask me, but it is not. So once again, folks, we are diving into an incredible episode tonight, but before we dive in, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Swannies Golf. Folks, I've got the Swannies hat on tonight. I've got the Ivy Polo, or I was going to say Ivy Polo. I've got the Ivy hoodie on. I am getting ready for the fall as well. And certainly these Ivy hoodies, these little drawstrings in the front, and for our podcast listeners listening in, I've got the charcoal gray on. There's the polka dot on the inside. And then I got a pink Swannies hat on as well with the vents on the sides. Swannies just does it right, folks. And they had, by the way, over Labor Day, I don't know if the sale's still going on, but they had 30% off. But I do have an announcement coming up around Swannies. So make sure to stay tuned to that over either this week or next. Well, I will say this. Next week, I will be sharing some special details around this announcement with Swannies Golf. So definitely make sure to stay tuned for that announcement, because there might be some big deals coming, might be some big giveaways that are coming. So just make sure to be tuning into the podcast for all those details. Carlos Flores says, Arthur Hills, ? No, that is not the golf course behind me. This is going to be a fun one, because you guys, once you figure it out, it's just such a great track. So, without further ado, let's dive right into the 2024 Tour Championship, the finale at Eastlake. As I mentioned on last week's episode, which was the title of the episode, all eyes were on Eastlake. Were they, though? Were they? Because Scotty Scheffler, who came in with the 2-shot lead, ends up winning the Tour Championship. Shocker. I know everybody is shocked. We tried to throw a little bit of doubt in there, right? With, Scotty Scheffler had a back injury in the week prior at the BMW Championship at Castle Pines in Colorado. Well, he showed no signs of a back injury whatsoever. And you got to give it up for Colin Morikawa. Colin Morikawa, this year for Colin Morikawa, I hope it just builds his confidence up for 2025, and he has a monster of a year in 2025, because he was so close so often this year. He was right there a lot of the big events, and he just never really pulled through, just didn't have that extra gear to kick it into to pull off a win. This was another one. I think the closest he got was within 3 strokes. Everybody was trying to make it out to be, this tournament isn't over. Scotty Scheffler had this thing in the bag, folks. And granted, Scotty Scheffler, for some reason, he shows a little bit of, how do I put it? Scotty Scheffler shows a little bit of weakness sometimes on Sundays when having a decent-sized lead. He shanked one, and he hit a couple wayward shots. So Scotty Scheffler definitely wasn't super duper impressive, but you just knew that he was going to win. That's the thing. It's like, man, wouldn't it have been so much better? And finally, I saw another golf personality out there, Nick Faldo, went ahead and up on X, he posted the fact that, hey, match play maybe? So I hope that we get enough of an audience push towards match play for the FedEx Cup, because here's the thing. It was boring. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, it really was boring. The Creator Cup happened, right? And that whole thing was the precursor on Wednesday to the FedEx Cup Tour Championship. And I'll just tell you, it was anticlimactic. There wasn't at one point over the entire stretch of the 4 days that I was watching that I'm going, I wonder if somebody else is going to win. It was always Scotty Scheffler. It was always going to be Scotty Scheffler. So kudos to those that played really well over the weekend. I mean, I saw one thing to where if it was just a straight up golf tournament, Colin Morikawa would have won by 2 over Scotty Scheffler. But Scotty played great. And Trot Golfer throws in a comment here around Scotty is just amazing. He played like the way he played all season. He doesn't F it up. That is correct. We got the Butsy joining us via the YouTube chat room, folks. He says, I'm crippled, boys. Oh, we know, Butsy. It's a tough one today for the Butts, man. And hopefully, we hope you get well soon. But hang in on the comments and chime in as necessary tonight. We'd love to have you stick around just to chime in here and there. But Wyndham Clark was my dark horse. He ended up finishing top 10. I mean, there was a bunch of guys, obviously. Sam Burns was pretty impressive over the course of the week. And I just really think that it's just not working, the FedEx Cup and the Tour Championship. I don't know how you feel as an audience member, but this year I was trying so hard to get Butsy pumped up. I was trying so hard to get pumped up. And it really is just kind of... So, I don't know. You can tell, I wasn't a super big fan of how it all played out. And I'm glad that for Trot Golfer, Wyndham is now in his heart. I love that for you, and I love that for Wyndham, and I love that for me because, Wyndham Clark he's a special player out there. I know a lot of people were like, all of a sudden after a few wins, we're trying to hate on him and how good he was and everything because he struggled. There were times where he struggled this year and he lost his confidence for a while, but he really built it back up and he showed a lot of heart and a lot of grit at the end of the year, especially from the Olympics on. Now, Dylan Vaudry brings up another good point. Sahith Theegala played really well. And let's talk about Sahith Theegala because he was compared to he was compared against Patrick Reed. Remember when Patrick Reed had the huge debacle in the bunker to where even the camera picked up the grains of sand being pushed back because his ball happened to be in a footprint and he was trying to make himself a little bit of a better lie. And even then he denied it, right? And that was a huge controversy. Patrick Reed, blah, blah, blah. Sahith Theegala did the exact opposite, okay? Sahith Theegala, due to the humidity and heat, he might have sat there and been like, wow, I think I just touched the sand. And even as we zoomed in with the $1 million cameras, we didn't see anything, right? There was absolutely nothing that took place, but he assessed against himself a 2-shot penalty. Now, he did say after the round that, he talked with Xander Schauffele and they thought the right thing to do was to report it. And he thought that they weren't going to penalize him because clearly he didn't really know, but at the same time, forgetting the exact words that he used to describe his conversation with Xander, but they thought that it wasn't intentional. He wasn't trying to do it. So just let the officials know and they'll probably won't assess anything. Well, he got hit with a 2-shot penalty, but he ended up playing phenomenal. And we're going to get into the President's Cup and those picks and everything in a little bit. But we'll talk about good old Sahith Theegala because this kid, he's a player, man. And he's got some hands on him for sure. So we shall see. Now, Trot Golfer says, no way he plays the back like that if there was no penalty, but who knows? Adversity makes the best better. It just shows a lot of character, and I think Sahith won a lot of fans this week. And I know people, especially on tour, have been kind of annoyed by his parents because his parents don't really know golf, don't know the etiquette and so forth, and follow him around at just about every single event and are very loud. And, I've even been around them at the Waste Management Phoenix Open just in passing. And I'm like, wow, they are pretty loud. Like everything that's been said about them is kind of true. And sure enough, I think a lot of people are big fans of Sahith Theegala after what he did, even beyond, even the people that were critics because of his folks. And them not knowing golf and the etiquette and so forth and being very loud out there at the golf course. And that is, so Trot says his parents are the best. How cool is that? It's crazy that people do pinpoint these little things against certain players and kind of use that against them. And I found that interesting with Sahith, right? That, people on tour don't necessarily like being paired with him because of the parents. So, that's partially a competitive advantage if you ask me. But at the same time, it is pretty cool that Sahith did that and had the type of character to assess himself a 2-stroke penalty. Even on the broadcast, they're just like, he didn't touch the sand. And if I was him and I see that replay, I'm going in and asking for my 2 shots back. He never did that. And that was interesting to see. So, again, shout out to Sahith Theegala. And by the way, just playing absolutely great. That kid has tremendous hands as well. If you're watching him around the greens and so forth, this kid is unbelievable. He will be a major winner Probably pretty soon. Over the next 2 years, I would imagine Sahith Theegala is probably going to get it done. Remember, he played really, really well and was right there at the PGA Championship this year. Just a great player overall. I mean, I'd love to just go down the leaderboard here, and why not? Let's absolutely do that right now. So let me pull up. And by the way, this is one of the benefits of me just sitting here in front of the screen, is that we're just going to go ahead and take a look at this together, folks. So as we take a look at the Tour Championship, let me expand my screen here. Here we go. Here is the leaderboard. We're just going to run it down. So Scottie Scheffler finishes at 30 under. Colin Morikawa, 26 under. Sahith Theegala, 24 under. Russell Henley. Russell Henley is an interesting one. We'll talk about him in the President's Cup selections. Minus 19. Adam Scott played really well once again at minus 19. Xander Schauffele was a little bit of a disappointment. I felt like he was the one guy that could potentially give Scottie Scheffler a little bit of trouble. And if it came down to Sunday and Xander Schauffele is right there with Scottie, that he'd have a good chance. Sung J M finishes 7th, Wyndham Clark 8th, Rory McIlroy T9, and then he was T9 with Hideki Matsuyama and Shane Lowry. Now, Victor Hovland had a great week as well. I think he was one of the top 5 players if there were no additional strokes in there. Sam Burns is in there at 15 under. Taylor Pendrith. Justin Thomas has had a little bit of a late surge this year. Maybe some things to come. And I did find out a little bit of information around JT in particular, okay? JT, apparently when Bones was on the bag, and I had said it numerous times about Justin Thomas with Bones being on the bag. It just seemed like Bones would give him way too much information. And he treated him very much like Phil Mickelson and how he would give Phil every little detail. For JT, it just was too much. And what I ended up hearing is that JT actually was oftentimes stating that he was blaming his team in a lot of ways, all the people around him, for his bad performances and his bad play, which is interesting because I hadn't really seen it. It was almost like I just kind of saw it from the outside in that, wow, things just necessarily don't really look like they're going well for JT. Obviously, his performance over the past couple of years hasn't been great. And there's been signs, though, of JT kind of finding it, so to speak. And that's where, you know, Trot Golfer here would love to blame Grayson Clothing for that because he wears joggers. But I like joggers. I'm going to be honest with you, Trot. I like joggers. Swannies makes a great jogger as well. I have not gotten a pair of those yet. I might be asking for them coming up this fall season. But with the new caddy on the bag, and he's really taken responsibility this year, apparently. And he kind of looked internally and he's just like, you know what? I need to start holding myself accountable for everything that's going on instead of blaming everybody around me. And I think that has started to show towards the end of the year for JT. So JT's got a lot to look forward to heading into 2025. Obviously, he is going to be in all of the Signature Series events, which if you remember last year, he was playing a lot in the fall because he needed points. And that was a big issue for Justin Thomas last year. Now, Trot, I know you mentioned your boy, Billy Horschel. Where was Billy? Oh, Billy was tied for last. Or not tied for last, sorry, tied for 23rd. There was 30 players. Akshay Bhatia was down there, a couple of other guys. Christian Bezuidenhout, who is going to be on the President's Cup team. He finished in last along with Tom Hoagie. So, yeah, 30 players only, and that is your leaderboard for the Tour Championship. I'm going to get rid of that screen real quick here. We might get back to something in a little bit as well. But that pretty much, let's see here. hopefully you guys were able to see the PGA Tour leaderboard. I don't know if you did or not, because there's something on my system that says that you weren't able to see the screen. So just let me know. Trot, especially you. Were you able to see the PGA Tour leaderboard there that I had pulled up? If not, it's okay. We're going to keep it moving, keep it grooving. Now, outside of the Tour Championship, and once again, okay, so Dylan Vaudry, you saw it. Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it. You guys got the board. Awesome. Yeah, I got some message from the computer that just said, from the good old Macintosh. Let me know that you might not have been able to see it, but glad that you were able to, because I'm going to share some more here in just a little bit on screen with all of you. But let's talk about the FedEx Cup once again, because I'm not done with the whole match play deal. I think match play wise, this would have been so much more interesting if all of a sudden we head into the final event at East Lake and all of a sudden you've got match play going on over the 4 days. Now, everybody's tired, okay? It's the end of the golf season. It's been a long season. They've played in a lot of signature series events, and I get it. It is a grind, but wouldn't you want to see two players just going head to head? Let's say that, Colin Morikawa versus Scotty Scheffler. Match play. 36 holes for the finale. I would have tuned into that 100%. And maybe you give what you do. Oh, maybe you copy LIV Golf with this one. Well, maybe you do a podium, first, second, third. And you have the third and fourth players playing as well. But I would just love that with the players mic'd up with their caddies and just having an environment where, and I get it, the match and all these others, like, how do you keep people entertained throughout? Well, you can have a simulcast like us be on there talking about, different stories and interviewing people, kind of like there's just so much potential that is there. But if you really buy into the creator aspect, and you got the Creator Classic that goes on beforehand, which, by the way, I wasn't against. The Creator Classic was okay. It didn't really... It took a lot for me to sit there and watch the entire thing, but I wanted to, and I wanted to... keep an open mind and a neutral mindset around it. Roger Steele was pretty impressive with the Creator Classic. I don't mean to completely segue off of what we were talking about with the match play, but the Creator Classic was good in a way. Like, it came down to the end. There was the one-hole playoff with 4 different curators, and they played good golf. That's the thing. That was the cool thing about all of it. They played better than I think anybody had expected. And that being said, let's lead from that into the Tour Championship, and let's do something very cool around the Tour Championship to where everybody's mic'd up. You're getting those conversations. Maybe you can get a little bit of banter back and forth between the players, or maybe it's just dead silence between the two. Let's say that it was Scotty Scheffler versus Xander Schauffele in that final match. Like, that would have been pretty gosh darn sick. Or if it was Scotty Scheffler versus Sam Burns, who are really good friends, and we saw it in the WGC match play. Was it last year or the year prior? It was when it ended, the WGC match play. I just think there's such an opportunity there. And right now, without the WGC match plays, there is no match play event on the PGA Tour. Let's bring back match play. I swear I'm going to start a hashtag, which hashtags don't really work anymore anyways, but hashtag bring back match play. And Trot Golfer mentions here, back to a tournament in the 1930s. I want Shell's Wonderful World of Sports back. And getting those match play events, if you've ever seen the Pine Valley one, That one is pretty special as a match play. Some people have no idea what I'm talking about, by the way. But I just want to see match play for the finale at East Lake. I just think it would be phenomenal. Phenomenal content, mano y mano. I think you do need to have the third and fourth place tournament as well, just like they used to in the match play event. And then, yeah. All right. I'm moving on. I'm moving on from that. Let's get into the 2024 President's Cup picks. Since we're talking about match play anyways on the what I want the Tour Championship to become and be. I want it to be more content creation, match play style, one-on-one, mano a mano. I just love that aspect to it. And guess what? We're going to be getting that in a couple weeks with the 2024 President's Cup, because today there was the captain's picks that took place. Let's go over these. So first of all, Team USA, which is captained by Jim Furyk. Jim did a Jim thing today, and I applaud Jim for doing a Jim thing. It's funny how the media... Now, you had to watch the Golf Channel in order to hear Jim Furyk announce his picks. So most people know with this podcast, I don't love the Golf Channel. Just going to be honest about it. It's really kind of, I don't know, man. Like, do I have to say more about that? Because I feel like a lot of people understand where I'm coming from, and a lot of people understand that the Golf Channel isn't what it used to be, and they just led into a whole bunch of propaganda against LIV Golf for a long period of time, and now they haven't really recovered, and they're just kind of this, I don't know. But anyways, I had to watch it because I had to hear Jim Furyk and Mike Weir talk about their captain's picks, and sure enough, Jim, once again, did a very Jim thing. Jim Furyk went and, picked 7 through 12 for the rankings of the President's Cup. He took everybody in order. So he literally has 1 through 12 on his team. He did not go outside of that. So he's got Sam Burns, Russell Henley, Keegan Bradley, Max Homa, Brian Harmon, and Tony Finau, which filled out your 7 through 12 for the President's Cup. It is what it is. But the Golf Channel was really, really trying to play the media content game today. And they, it was funny, man. They're sitting there just trying to create something out of nothing. They're like, I can't believe that they did not pick Justin Thomas. It's like, what? Didn't Zach Johnson get destroyed for picking the boys club and Ricky Fowler, Justin Thomas, and Jordan Spieth? Like, what are you talking about? I just found that to be super interesting. And I'm like, how can you argue with the fact that these guys all lined up points-wise? There is nothing wrong, in my opinion, with just playing it down how they ended up in points for the President's Cup. That's why there's a point system for the President's Cup, folks. Like, if there was somebody that was glaring, then he certainly could have gone down that path. Now, Draw Golfer, you actually raise a pretty good point here. They didn't pick Bryson. So, interesting enough, this was not one of the topics on the Golf Channel around picking any of the LIV Golf guys. Well, it never came up. And I had it on for like 2 hours watching this crap. And I'm just like, oh, man, this is tough to not only watch, but just hear them try to create some type of controversy out of Jim Furyk picking the guys in order. So, that being said, those are your picks. Now, the omissions were Justin Thomas and Billy Horschel, which, Trot, I know Billy Horschel is your favorite golfer of all time. You could make an argument for Billy Horschel, and Billy's had a strong finish to the year. But I don't even think Billy was that surprised by it all either. Like, he wanted to make the team. Jim Furyk's a good buddy of his. And no, this is not your Zach Johnson, Keegan Bradley moment for the President's Cup, okay? Now let's get into the international team with the picks by Mike Weir, okay? His picks were Corey Connors, Taylor Pendrith, Mackenzie Hughes. You've got, where are we here? Christian Bezadenhout, Siwoo Kim, and Minwoo Lee. So Minwoo Lee, this is going to be his first President's Cup, which is going to be fun to see him in this kind of entertaining type of action. But that being said, there were a couple guys that were left off. I feel like the international team has more opportunity for drama, so to speak, because they left off Nick Taylor and Adam Hadwin. Nick Taylor is the last Canadian to have won the Canadian Open last year, and he happened to win the Waste Management Phoenix Open this year. Adam Hadwin, on the other hand, I can see Adam Hadwin not, but this President's Cup, it's happening in Canada, and you would probably expect that Mike Weir would have potentially taken one of those two guys to join his other Canadians in Mackenzie Hughes and Corey Connors and Taylor Pendrith. But yeah, I don't know, man. Nick Taylor, I could see him being a really good player on that team. Adam Hadwin, yeah, I can see him being on that team too. But you can't go, like, he chose Christian Bezadenhout and Minwoo Lee, really, are the two in my mind that he picked over Nick Taylor and Adam Hadwin. And let's see here. Trot Golfer, I know you got some comments going on here. Let's see. Trot Golfer says, Nick Taylor should have been a pick for morale. Do you see the putt he made? I totally get it. And by the way, like, that would be the one pick that I'm like, why didn't Mike Weir pick Nick Taylor? Adam Hadwin, I could see. Hadwin can go ahead, and that's fine. Anti-Liv says that Hadwin's wife tweets too much, and that's why. She does. She does tweet a lot. She's a personality on Twitter, and she's kind of funny, too. Like, there's some funny shit that she comes up with. So I'm not going to hate on her, but it definitely, you know what's funny about you saying that is sometimes politics do come up, and those are things that get kind of pinpointed out that, hey, do you really want somebody whose wife is tweeting all the time to be a part of this and potentially tweeting against you and so forth? So those come up in these type of conversations when you make these picks. But Mike Weir, being the Canadian that he is, I would have thought he would have gone at least with Nick Taylor. If he went Adam Hadwin, it probably would have been too far. Would have been like, whoa, you are totally playing it up for the Canadian crowd, blah, blah, blah. But I think that's what he was trying to go against. He was trying to go against the narrative that he was just going to pick all Canadians because it's happening in Canada. He's the captain. He's Canadian. Now, Trot Golfer does ask a good question here, which I know this was a topic that No Laying Up got a little bit criticized for. Excuse me. Hang on a second. I need some of this Hi-Yo. Incredible. What a social tonic. Non-alcoholic. There we go. All right. So does anybody actually care about the President's Cup? I do. And like I said, No Laying Up talked about this. I didn't listen to their episode on it. I don't mind No Laying Up. I feel like they've kind of gone a little bit commercial ever since becoming very attached to the PGA Tour. And then they kind of had their little shift to LIV Golf for a second. And now they're kind of, but they've done their simulcasts and stuff. So it's been pretty cool to see a podcast being able to do those types of things. But that being said, they came out and they're like, nobody cares about the President's Cup. I like the President's Cup, and I'll say this. I like it because you get to see the international guys that you don't get to see in the Ryder Cup. You get to see some of the Koreans, right? You get to see a Siwoo Kim. You get to see a Tom Kim. You get to see a Ben On. You get to see a lot of these guys that you don't necessarily see otherwise, and you get to see them in this format. Now, from a U.S. standpoint, I get it from that side of things. It's like, well, we've got the Ryder Cup. Ryder Cup's way more important to us than the President's Cup. But imagine you not have this. And the only thing you had was every 2 years the Ryder Cup. You're going to have a year gap to where you're like, oh, this sucks. Fall golf. We don't have the President's Cup now. So this is part of the whole deal, and I enjoy it. Now, the U.S. dominates. I think the record is something like 11-1-1 or something along those lines. Something crazy. So it's fine from that respect. Like, the U.S. dominates, and as a U.S. fan, I love that. But, you know, would it be better if it was a little bit more competitive? Yeah, and I will say this. I think this is the first year that the international team really has a chance. Really has a chance to pull off the upset over the U.S. team, partially because Jim Furyk took a little bit of the safety route with the just picking 1 through 12. Now, if we look at some of these guys in his picks, you know, Max Homa hasn't had a great season. Brian Harman has not finished well lately and has struggled. Tony Finau hasn't been the Tony Finau that we all know and love. Russell Henley's had a good year. Sam Burns has had a good year. Keegan Bradley obviously has come on, but has won 3 times this year. So you can't really complain against those guys. But there's some weaknesses there, which, again, I don't go against what Jim Furyk did with his picks. It's more so this is going to be a little bit interesting because, you know, you got a Corey Connors who plays really well up in Canada. He's got that nice little draw. Taylor Pendrith has been coming around. He obviously played in the Tour Championship, finished last or close to last, but that being said, he still was there. Mackenzie Hughes, solid player. Christian Bezuidenhout is actually a really good player that I'm curious to see moving forward a little bit more. Siwoo Kim and Minwoo Lee, but again, Minwoo Lee, Siwoo Kim, Tom Kim, like these guys are your characters. Those are the ones that can really kind of create an environment there, get people really behind them. And I just think that it's really cool to be able to see those guys play in this type of format. So I'm for the President's Cup. I love it. I get behind it. I love Team USA. I will say that some of the caddies, after they caddy for the international team, you can tell that they certainly pull for the international team over the U.S., even though they're from the U.S., because they kind of feel like they're the underdogs and there's a cool vibe to them because of that. But let's go over some of these guys that are on the team as a whole, right? So for the U.S. team, you got Scotty Scheffler. He's matched up against Hideki Matsuyama. You got Xander Schauffele, Sungjae Im. You got Colin Morikawa versus Adam Scott. Wyndham Clark versus Tom Kim, Patrick Cantlay versus Jason Day, Sahith Theegala versus Ben On. You know, the U.S., U.S. is strong in those top 6, in my opinion. They're very, very strong. Where the international team, that's where you're a little bit limited, in my opinion. Like Hideki Matsuyama, just depends on which Matsuyama we get that week. Sungjae Im is always going to be just very, very solid. But he runs into some nerve issues. Like, he's a little nervy under pressure sometimes. Adam Scott is just pure gentleman. I'm just going to leave that at that. Adam Scott is going to be a guy who is going to play really well, in my opinion, at a President's Cup. He loves that type of environment. He's going to be great. Actually, let me pull this up for you guys. So the ones that are watching on the live, I'm going to be pulling up the leader or the President's Cup teams. Here we go. So we've got, once again, Hideki Matsuyama, Scotty Scheffler. I would take Scotty Scheffler all day in that one, obviously. Xander Schauffele I would take over Sungjae Im almost on a daily basis. Number 3 is where it gets a little bit interesting. As much as I love Colin Morikawa, Adam Scott, that could be a tough one for Colin Morikawa if they played head-to-head. Wyndham Clark, Tom Kim. As much as I love Wyndham Clark, I love me some Tom Kim. I would end up going Tom Kim in that one. Jason Day, Patrick Cantlay. Patrick Cantlay showed at the Ryder Cup that he is a force to be reckoned with. So I like Patrick Cantlay in that one. And then I love Sahith Theegala against Ben-An. Right? So U.S. takes the majority of those. But here's the thing with the picks. Oh, and I'm sorry. It's not 7 through 12. It's 7 through 15. My apologies for my earlier statement that said 7 through... Oh, hang on a second. This is... Am I seeing this correctly? Hang on a second. Oh, that's from a day ago. So hang on. Okay, my apologies. This is 7 through 12. I was correct. I confused my own self because this is a day old from the PGA Tour.com. You've got Corey Connors versus Sam Burns. Now, Cam Davis did not get selected, and he was in the 8th slot. So that's interesting, right? Minwoo Lee was in the 9th slot. Christian Bezuidenhout 10. 11 was Taylor Pendrith. Nick Taylor was in that 12th spot, but he went Siwoo Kim instead, which, if you remember the hush, that was Siwoo Kim giving the hush at the last President's Cup. So I get that. And then he went Mackenzie Hughes, who was in 15th over Nick Taylor. I feel like I'm building more of a case for Nick Taylor than anything, that he kind of got screwed over in this whole deal, especially being a Canadian. Mackenzie Hughes is solid, though. And as I look at the U.S. side, yeah, he just went 7 through 12. All right. I tried to convince myself that the international side had a chance, and I'm probably saying that they don't. Just being honest here. I don't think they do. I really don't. All right, let's see. Trot Golfer here said that, how do you not pick the Canadian? I do wonder now. I didn't realize that Nick Taylor was 12th. That he was technically in the top 12. I figured he was outside of that, and it would have been a pick for Mike Weir to pick him and put him into there. But yeah, I don't know what the story is there, folks, so I'm not going to try to speculate. And yes, Trot, I am with you. As much as I like Brian Harman, he's not a good pick for this one. I'm with you there. He has struggled at the end of this year. His highlight was winning the Open Championship a year ago, and I just don't think that he has found that same form this year. He had a hell of a year. So same thing with Scottie Scheffler this year. Scottie Scheffler's had a hell of a year this year. Let's actually get into a little bit of story time before we get into the Swannies style segment, okay? So a little bit of story time over the weekend, and I probably should have led with this, but I was feeling bad for good old Bunsey being injured and throwing out his back. He was complaining a little bit about it over the weekend, and it wasn't completely blown out, but it was definitely on the fritz, I would say. On the fritz, his back was, and sure enough, we were up in Payson, Arizona, playing Chaparral Pines, which is one of my favorite golf courses, and out here in Arizona, I will say that is one of my favorite golf courses to go play. Some people are going to say, it's a little gimmicky, some of the holes and stuff. That is a golf course that I could play every single day for the rest of my life, and I would be perfectly happy in doing so. There's strategy out there. You can't overpower the golf course. I just really enjoy that golf course. And we were out there playing, and a gentleman, and I will just say that his name was Brandon, and he knows who he is. Brandon, who may have some attachments to Chaparral Pines. Me and Butsy, I will say that Butsy played pretty well. Butsy threw in some birdies, but I did not play well. I did not, and for the past month and a half, maybe 2 months, I have not had my A game. I haven't really had the B game. It's kind of just been I can't really score, not making a ton of birdies like I normally do, and my short game, dealing with a bit of the short game yips. And yeah, we were down. Okay? Heading into the last couple holes, and Butsy happens to yell out, "I press." And sure enough, Brandon accepted. What did Brandon proceed to do? Well, he went ahead and he made a hole in one. And that was a devastator. Everybody was going nuts. And it was one of these shots, by the way, that in the air, you're just like, oh shit, that's going in the hole. And it was a short par 3. I think it plays around like 145 yards, somewhere around there. And it just hit right behind the pin. And you knew that there was going to be backspin. But it was such a little draw that it hit just to the right and behind the pin, and you knew that the spin was just going to be perfectly right back into the hole. And just to see it drop and disappear, everybody went nuts. The only person that did not go nuts was poor Butsy, especially because he had just pressed. I don't know if you guys have ever been in this situation before to where you press and then somebody makes a hole in one on you. But that is as devastating of a maneuver as it gets. Now, I was there. I saw it all happen, and I happened to be on Butsy's team. And the one thing that never got asked to me was, Matt, do you want to press? So I was happy for the guy, but I saw where Butsy was not very happy about the situation that had just occurred. And it cost us a little bit of money, which was fine. It was his day. It was his day. Said I was going to talk about it on the podcast, and sure enough. So shout out to Brandon. He knows exactly who he is. And yeah, that was one of the finer moments that I've seen. I mean, you got to be on cloud 9 if you do that. And I will just say that I've had a similar situation where I was once playing a match against somebody, and we went ahead and did a little bit of a press for the last. I didn't think I was going to be able to come back and win the match, which I was down. I think I'd spotted him 6 shots. And by the way, this was when I was a +3. And I had spotted him 6 shots, and he's a guy that would shoot in like the high 70s. Sure enough, he's playing lights out. I was playing right around like even par. And then all of a sudden, he presses. Or no, I'm sorry, I press. So it was kind of the opposite effect. I press. And I proceed to go eagle. We got to the next hole, which was a par 3. And this was at Trilogy of Estancia, by the way. So if you know Trilogy of Estancia, you'll know that there's a par 5, then a par 4. Actually, so there was a par 4. So I went eagle, birdie, and then the par 3, I believe that's the 17th hole, if I'm not mistaken. Went ahead and made a hole in one on that hole, and then eagled the last. And that poor guy was devastated because he went from being like, I think he was like 3 up heading into the last 4 holes, and I press. And then I proceed to do that and win the last 4 holes to where he just never had a chance. So shout out to you, Brandon, for pulling that hole in one against Butsy and I. And to see Butsy just so devastated, it was ridiculously entertaining and fun, and that was Brandon's day. So that's what happened up north, up in Chaparral Pines in Payson, Arizona. It was a beautiful day. I think it was only like 80 degrees, cloudy. Awesome. Just awesome. Let's see. We've got Trot Golfer says, maybe we need an on-course lesson out at Palm Brook, Maddie. I do. I really, really do, Trot. So I may take you up on that. I did have a great conversation and an interview recently that I will be posting next week on the podcast with none other than the short game chef, Parker McLaughlin. So stay tuned for that whole deal. But yeah, anyways, let's move on from the international picks. We've been talking way too long here. Let's get into the Swanee style segment. And here's the thing, folks. Since Butsy's not on tonight, I'm just going to get right to the point. And with the fall season approaching, let's make sure that we are layering appropriately, okay? This hoodie here, this Ivy hoodie by Swannies, has been a staple in the Swannies collection. And you can't do no wrong with this. This is a perfect one for fall. It's lightweight, moisture wicking, and just a great material for a hoodie. Now, when I come on the show, this is all I wear. I don't wear a polo underneath. I don't have a t-shirt underneath. The material is just phenomenal for getting right onto the skin. But always make sure that you've got some layers out there, okay? Whether you're starting early in the morning and the day's going to get a little bit hotter, or vice versa, you got to watch out for the weather. I'm from the Northeast, so originally from New York, and it's funny because October used to be my favorite time to play golf in the fall season. And here's the thing, Swannies has everything for you. If you want a little bit thicker of a hoodie, they've got that for you. If you want more of the performance athletic fit like I'm wearing tonight, they've got that. If you need a beanie because your ears are getting cold, we've got that over at Swannies as well. And just remember, folks, that you've got a promo code here at Polo Hook Golf. Polo Hook Golf 25 at checkout. Get 25% off your entire order. And once again, I would stay tuned to next week because there's going to be an even bigger Swanee style segment that we go over next week with some potential announcements. So stay tuned for all of that. And as we move from the Swanee style segment into the fall golf preview, I am going to bring up, not that one. Hang on a second for me. I'm going to bring up the fall schedule here for the PGA Tour. Give me 1 second, because I like this part of the season. I don't know about everybody else, but I tend to enjoy the fall season when it comes to the PGA Tour. Let's pull it up. Because we get to go to some pretty cool places, okay? We start off September 12th through 15th, which is next week. We've got Napa, all right? Wine country. You've got everything you could want with the Procore Championship, and that's going to be a fun one. Great golf course, too, by the way, over at Silverado. Now, we've got the President's Cup. That's happening in Montreal, Quebec. Then from there, we've got the Sanderson Farms Championship. And I'm just going to keep it moving down through here because Sanderson Farms is probably my least favorite out of the bunch. Just going to be perfectly honest with everybody. But the next two tournaments are going to be awesome. The October 10th through the 13th, this is a brand new location for the PGA Tour. I feel like this is a test run for Utah. They're going to be a part of the FedEx Cup next year with Utah being a part of this. I don't know if this is the same course that they're going to be playing, but it is the Black Desert Resort Golf Course in Ivins, Utah. So be prepared because that is a phenomenal golf course. It is beautiful out there. And then we've got the Shriners. I love the Shriners. I was out there last year with S.H. Kim and Bobby Brown and walking the practice round. Got to see a bunch of people I knew out there, and it was just a great time. I might end up going back up there this year as well. We shall see to cover that. Tom Kim won that one, and Shriners is always a great one. And then we've got the Zozo Championship to kind of fill out the October side of things. And then in November, we go down to Diamante, which is Tiger's track at El Cardenal in Los Cabos. Maybe might take a trip down there. But then we've got the Butterfield Bermuda Championship. And then finally, the RSM Classic. Until the Hero World Challenge in December, the Grant Thornton Invitational, and then Q School as we sum it up. But man, this fall schedule, I like the fall season. I like the fall schedule. I like some of the courses we get to see. And that's going to be pretty interesting to see, in my opinion. And we're going to have some great stuff coming up because the fall season, it isn't just going to be around analysis and recaps and stuff like that, but we also are going to have interviews once again. So like I mentioned, got an interview that's coming up next week with Parker McLaughlin that is going to be put out. There's another interview that I recently did that's going to be released with Ted Simons, who is a golf industry expert, owns a consulting company, has worked with Jack Nicklaus, with all the Jack Nicklaus academies, and set all of those up. So just some great content that's going to be coming. There's some more interviews that are going to be coming as well. So stay tuned for all of those. And then we've also got LIV Golf, which is going to be next week in Chicago. And then we've got the team championship that's going to happen the week after in Dallas at Merido, I believe the name of the golf club is, in Dallas. So we've got those two for LIV Golf. Got some great stuff coming. And that's, let's see, Trot Golfer, he said, is this where Jeff Overton gets in half of these? What's nice about the fall season, and I'm starting to see it more so, and it's funny, you guys will hear the interview that I did with Parker McLaughlin, but Parker is one of these guys that was a one-time PGA Tour winner, right? He wasn't somebody that was always at the top of the leaderboard, so you could almost say that he's one of these guys like a Jeff Overton, or, you know, some of these guys that are lower on the that's lower on the numbers in terms of the guys that would, like, Parker wouldn't have gotten into the Signature Series events and so forth. And we talked about that during the interview around whether or not he thinks that it's a good thing with the Signature Series events. And I'll leave that for the interview itself. But I will just say that this fall season, as I'm thinking about it, as I'm talking about it with all of you, this is where, for them, this is everything now. And this is their season, so to speak, to try to win a couple golf tournaments. So if I was somebody that was, you know, had some status on the PGA Tour, that this would be the season that I would be looking for. And now that the Signature Series events are a part of the Tour Championship and the final two events, and as long as you're in the top 50, going to the BMW Championship, you now have the Signature Series events. Because last year, a lot of guys like Justin Thomas, some of the guys that were trying to gain some more points, were playing in a lot of these fall series events. So taking necessarily a spot away from somebody who wanted to play in these events and try to keep their PGA Tour card and so forth. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think the fall season could end up being, and I wouldn't even throw this moniker on it or this kind of label on it, but this is kind of the future, right? These are the guys that are up and coming, but that is one way that they could brand this rather than just calling it the fall series, is to say that this is the futures. That these are the guys that are next, that are coming up on to the PGA Tour. Get some more Korn Ferry guys, some status in these events. You know, Korn Ferry's had an entire season, so why not help some of these guys that have had a good season on the Korn Ferry Tour get into some of these events for the fall series? Could be interesting. So again, I think that's going to be a fun part of the schedule. And granted, we've got football, we've got a lot of stuff going on, but this was always my favorite time of year when it came to golf. I loved golfing in the fall season. I love the foliage, as you can see behind me. And I will say this, those of you that have chimed in with your answers for what golf course is behind me, I will tell you, this golf course is Wade Hampton Golf Club. in Cashiers, North Carolina. It is in the top 100 list. Normally it sits within the top 20 of golf courses in the top 100 list in the United States. This place is unreal. I was lucky enough to be able to go out here in, I want to say that it was October that I was out there, and it just was unreal. And again, this was taken on a BlackBerry. So was not the greatest quality, and yet you can see all the vibrant colors and how beautiful it was out there. It was even more beautiful in person. But the fall season has a special place with me. I absolutely love it. And next week, I don't know if Butsy is going to be on or not next week, but he is going to be caddying on the Korn Ferry Tour for a Korn Ferry player. So, and I'm blanking on the name for some reason. Butsy, if you're still listening and you're on, add it to the comments. But he is going to be caddying next week. So in Nashville, I will see if he will join us remotely with his player. But Ben Grant, that is correct. There you go, Trunk Golfer. You got a better memory than I do. And we were talking about him the entire time we were up in Payson. So Ben Grant, Butsy will be caddying for him next week. And we were talking about it. And, maybe some laughter is going to do Ben some good because this kid has Brent Grant. There we go. I was like, Ben Grant doesn't sound quite right, but Brent Grant does. So thanks, Trot Golfer, for pulling that one up. But this kid just has a tremendous amount of talent, and hopefully, with Butsy on the bat, bringing some comedic energy out there. Hopefully he can loosen him up a little bit and get him a solid finish next week in Nashville. So we shall see. We'll play it by ear, see if Butsy will be on for next week's episode. Hopefully dialing in remotely. We shall see. But until next week, folks, do once again make sure that you go to Swannies.co, utilize the promo code PullHookGolf25 at checkout. And again, you'll be supporting the Pull Hook Golf podcast. You also get the 25% off. So it's a win-win-win-win-win for everybody. And again, next week, we've got some good stuff in addition to our weekly episode. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully we have Butsy on talking to us about their experience thus far in their preparation for the tournament in Nashville. I will be also doing some interviews. And like I said, next week we'll have Parker McLaughlin. The week after we'll have Ted Simons. And then we'll have some individual episodes going as well. So without further ado, folks, I am going to be signing off. Let's see. Trot Golfer says 10 a.m. tomorrow, Matty. We're playing if you're on the west side. Trot, I will DM you on Instagram about that. All right, we shall talk soon. But everybody, hope you all have a great night. And once again, thank you for listening to the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. Peace out, everybody.